microphones. Is this thing live? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
So we got everybody now.
I gotta do a better job of cleaning up my background here. Like a mess. What's that?
Hey, Jason, when you turned around, I thought I was looking at myself. Holy cow.
Yeah,
We got to get some hair implants or something.
exactly. Are we live?
Yes.
Okay.
Oops.
Got about 2 minutes.
Okay, John, I'm wearing shorts.
So am I.
I am as well, but I'm wearing pants over mine.
Good point. Good point. Everywhere.
Amy's all squared away.
And then the microphone's working now too.
Oh, it is? Good.
It seems to be.
All right. All right. It appears to be 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakewood City Council for Monday, April 20th to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Boki. Councilmember Brandstetter.
Here.
Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Simpson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Whalen.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Now, participation at this meeting in public, as far as public comments go, will be accepted by email. Comments sent to Brianna Schumacher as the city clerk at Schumacher, that's at BSCHUMACHER at cityoflakewood.us. Will be considered by the council. Comments received up to 1 hour before the meeting were provided to the city council electronically. Comments received after that will be provided to the city council after the meeting. Madam City Clerk, have there been any that have been received?
Mayor Anderson, we have received no public comments.
Thank you. We now move to the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the city council meeting of April 6, 2020. B, motion for 2020-19, authorizing the award of a construction contract to Miles Resources LLC in the amount of $6,034,066.10 for the construction of the Veterans Drive Southwest Improvement Project. C, motion number 2020-20, authorizing the award of a contract to McDonough and Sons, Inc. in the amount of $272,304.50 for the 2020 through 2025 street sweeping service. D, ordinance number 733, approving a site-specific rezone at 11918 and 11920 Nyanza Road Southwest, known as the Durr rezone. And E, resolution number 2020-03, ratifying Pierce County Ordinance 2019-70S, amending the Pierce County countywide planning policies and designating 14 county.
That's the microphone. There's nothing I can do about it.
Thank you. Is there any item which any member of the council wishes to have removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Whalen, seconded by Ms. Moss, that we adopt the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Will all in favor please signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, opposed, nay? The motion carries. We now move to the regular agenda. Resolution number 2020-04, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2020-04, adopting an amended 6-year 2020 through 2025 comprehensive transportation improvement program.
And now via technological magic, we will have a pause while we try to patch in Mr. Ott.
He's in Hawaii, it looks like.
Let's go join him.
Sorry about that. I had it in Mexico from an earlier meeting this evening, so I apologize with that. With that, I'll address the resolution this evening. Good evening, Mayor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Whalen, members of the council. This evening, we are recommending that City Council adopt the amendment to the city's current 2020 through 2025 6-year comprehensive transportation improvement program. Amendment is the addition of a pavement preservation project titled South Como Way Road Restoration, 96th Street South to South 84th Street, and referenced as Project 3020151. By adding this project to the current 6-year transportation improvement program, this pavement preservation project will be eligible for grant funds as part of the current call for projects through the Puget Sound Regional Council's countywide grant program. This requested amendment was discussed on March 16th as part of reports by the city manager. It's been advertised in the Tacoma News Tribune. It's been available on the city's website, and a public hearing was held on April 6th of 2020. To date, no public comments have been received regarding the proposed amendment. At this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Any questions from council for Mr. Ott? I could entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Simpson. Was that Ms. Farmer on the second?
Moss.
Ms. Moss on the second, to adopt resolution number 2020-04. Is there any further discussion? Will all in favor please signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Motion carries. Now move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the council?
There is none, Mayor.
Then we move to new business. Motion number 2020-21, Madam Clerk.
Motion number 2020-21, amending the rental housing safety program administrative procedures. Mr. Bueller.
Is this Mr. Bueller?
Am I ready to go, Brianna? Okay. This topic, again, has to do with the rental housing inspection program. The specific topic is the GFCI requirement. This item has been before the city council twice already. on March 9th and on April 13th. On April 13th, the City Council was provided with 4 options. Option number 1 was to make no changes to the current program. Option 2 was to no longer have a GFCI requirement for the rental housing program. Option 3, which was referred to as maintaining the existing condition standard, which was basically what was in construction had been approved before would stay unless it was unsafe. And 4 was something in the middle, which would require all units constructed after 1975 or newer to have GFCIs in bathroom and kitchens. What happened next was the City Council had quite a bit of discussion on this topic. At first, it was difficult to detect a level of consensus. But as the meeting moved forward, it seemed to coalesce, the council seemed to coalesce around options 3 or 4, with 4 having a slightly greater level of support. Recommendation this evening would be to amend the inspection checklist, section 7.3, which is found on page 107 of your City Council packet. And with that, that concludes my comments, and I give the matter back to the mayor and council.
Any questions for Mr. Buer?
I do have a question. Let me raise my hand here.
Mr. Whalen?
Thank you. Mr. Buer, now that you guys have had a little bit of time to take a look at it and looking at the data behind the number of units and properties within the program and the number of units and properties that have been inspected over the last year and a half, if the council chose option 4, do we have any sense of how many units this would likely impact remaining to be inspected?
We inspect roughly around 2,500 units per year. Majority of the failures is with GFCIs, but we also do have other electrical components that do fail.
Right.
I would suspect that a large number of apartment complex units will be able to pass, at least get past this section of 7.3 without the requirement for GFCIs. Again, this is only for structures 1975 and newer. The assumption is that most of these units will have them already unless they've been replaced with something else. The reason, again, 1975 was chosen was that's a general year that, after reviewing all the myriad of changes to the GFCI electrical requirements and basically looking at the level of construction and the types of units built in Lakewood, that seemed to be a good number to use.
So would it be fair to say then that the majority of units that have been inspected or to be inspected are likely post 1975?
I cannot say that because we choose the units at random.
But we don't have any historical data. When we did the units, the global units that were in the sphere of those to be registered, along with the properties to be registered, we didn't really have a column that analyzed the date, 2 years ago when we set this up, but we'll have to do that going forward, right?
Well, we did take a look at the years in which apartment complexes were built. And we did find that a majority of the units are going to be found in the 50s, 60s, and 70s range.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Mr. Simpson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Buer, I do have one question about the proposed amendment here or recommendation. Does that recommendation apply equally to option 3 as well as to 4?
I'm having difficulty understanding the question. Let me see if I can't answer it this way. I will tell you that if we go with option 4, it would appear to be much easier for the city staff to implement because we have a tendency to get away from the existing condition standard. there we have some concern that we would be spending a considerable amount of time doing background research on the unit.
All right, the reason I asked my question is when we get to the bottom of 109, you have their alternatives. And then the box below it, which talks about electrical systems. What I read in that box is not the same as what I read at the beginning of this. And so I'm wondering if what I'm reading here at the bottom of 109 isn't better suited to option 3, whereas what you have at the top of the page in 108 is better suited for option 4. And I want to be clear what we're agreeing to here, given our past 2 discussions.
Okay. Option 4 is the recommendation found on page 107.
All right, got it.
Okay. Option 3 is the alternative recommendation found on page 109.
All right,
Now, it references specific building code sections. If you go to page 8, the bottom under option 3, it lists specifically the language.
I see it.
Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Buer, how will moving to any option other than the current status quo affect any properties that currently are listed as having failed an inspection and haven't yet made a corrective action regarding the ground fault circuits? Are we going to be looking at properties that are pending reinspection to see if that is the reason and whether under the new standard they no longer have the requirement in notifying those property owners?
The answer to your question is yes. The way, if the council were to adopt either one of these proposals, we would go back to the existing applications that are in process or through reinspection and determine whether or not this revised standard would be applicable.
Thank you. Oh, can I ask one more question, Mr. Buer? When we discussed this the last time, the deputy mayor's suggestion that the process, not the checklist, but that the process include a recommendation to the owners of any properties that they consider installing GFCIs, and would some wording like that need to be incorporated into the checklist, particularly for the benefit of private inspectors that would be doing an inspection, would discover an older building without them and having them make that recommendation, as well as the city inspectors making that recommendation?
If the city council wishes to include that as a part of their action as amending the checklist, that would be fine. I don't see that as being a significant issue, and it's probably good advice that we can pass along. It would not be required if, of course, the structures were built after 1975. It would merely just be a recommendation.
I think what my thought would be is that if there's a sense by staff that that's a desired process, that that I don't necessarily know we have to add it to the motion that is before us. If procedurally it could be adopted by staff.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Buer? Well, thank you, Mr. Buer. Now entertain a motion.
Move adoption
of, I think we have to specify a particular option, Mr. Branstetter.
Okay, I haven't got the number in front of me. I'm sorry, Mayor. Move adoption of motion 2020-21.
Which is option 4, correct?
Yes, option 4.
Is there a second?
Second,
Pardon?
a second from me.
And that, Mr. Whalen.
Yeah.
So we have a
sorry.
motion by Mr. Branstetter, second from Mr. Whalen, that we adopt motion number 2020-21 regarding GFCI inspection requirements. Is there further discussion among council? All right, well, all in favor, unmute. Yeah, you're all unmuted. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Madam Clerk, would you please call a roll call vote? You're muted, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Simpson,
Nay.
Deputy Mayor Whalen,
Aye.
Councilmember Boki,
Nay.
Councilmember Branstetter,
Aye.
Councilmember Farmer,
Aye.
Councilmember Moss,
Aye.
Mayor Anderson,
Aye.
5-2.
Motion carries. Thank you. We now move to reports by the city manager, and Mr. Caulfield.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Good to see you all on this sunny evening. I'd like to start off first with some COVID-19 updates if I can, and just some quick stats. So nationwide, over 750,000 Americans have been diagnosed with the virus, and to date, over 41,000 have passed. Within Washington State, the number infected is approaching 12,000 people, including 1,200, approaching 1,200 here in Pierce County. Statewide, there's been 634 deaths, while in Pierce County, it's been 34. Specific to Lakewood, the latest update from the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department is that there are 103 confirmed cases with 4 deaths. I think I sent you a note on Sunday. The governor had another COVID-19 coordination meeting with city and county leaders, and I was able to sit in on that. And Mayor Anderson, I don't know if you jumped in on that as well. The purpose there was to provide an update on the state's response, and really there was no big surprises there, in terms of what you probably have already seen in the media or from some of his previous briefings and news releases. Couple of the key takeaways that I'd like to point out is that certainly Washington State as a whole continues to be, viewed nationwide as a leader and taking actions early to, address this and kind of bend the curve. And certainly the statistics that we were presented on Sunday, which are available on the state's Department of Health website, do show that in terms of, the growth in the number of cases and things along those lines. Now it's not stopping or going away, but one of the words that was used, it was kind of plateauing in the Puget Sound region. However, in other parts of the state, it does continue to grow. One of the positive trends is that the number of hospital beds being used, there's a good number of capacity there, though ICU beds are being used at a much higher rate. So those are some good signs that they see. At the same time, the governor pointed out he's not ready to be able to, at this point in time, move to the next phase. And right now, that next phase deadline is 2 weeks from today, May 4th, 2020. He did note that as a state, and used a football analogy. He said, we're about at halftime. in terms of where we need to be. However, he also pointed out that he wanted to keep an open mind into, kind of reversing the process that was instituted in terms of what's open and not open. He did talk about wanting to get the economy open, and he wanted to keep not just an open mind, but also wish to hear from, cities, counties, business, labor, et cetera, on how to do that in a safe manner. Another key takeaway was, not just the trends overall, but also testing. And he noted, or rather, I think his staff noted, that there was going to be a number of new testing kits coming into Washington State this week, which is very, very welcomed. Because right now the number of test kits that we've had as a state has been fairly limited. So in terms of those being tested has been limited as well. And it's really been prioritized with healthcare workers, first responders, people obviously showing signs of COVID-19 and things along those lines. So these new test kits are going to open it up and allow more people to be tested. So some good news there. So overall, I thought it was a very positive briefing, really appreciated the governor's words, as well as those from the DOHS secretary and the state health officer, Dr. Lofi. So again, we'll see what happens on May 4th. One of the things that we did this morning here locally, and this is somewhat consistent with what a number of cities are doing, is we did open up our parks. We're going to do it beginning tomorrow, and the purpose there is for passive uses, for people to get out and exercise and things along those lines, not for exercising, not for congregation, not for sports. Those areas, like we did previously, we are going to kind of tape off and put out some signs and things like that. At Fort Steilacoom Park, we are going to allow access to the parking lot, and the reason being is because we don't want people parking out in the neighborhoods or in areas where they shouldn't be parking. Likewise, over at American Lake Park, we're actually going to open up the boat launch as well, and have a sign there that people, in terms of practicing social distancing, should only be launching one boat at a time. However, fishing and hunting is still prohibited under the governor's directive there. So look for some information on that. Our communications manager, Ben Grimley, will be releasing that later this evening over our various communication forums, including social media. So again, look for that. On the federal front, we continue to track what Congress is doing. Long story short, we received a call this morning that Congress was considering another stimulus bill. Unfortunately, the stimulus bill, which they're framing as version 3.5, did not include funding for local municipalities. I was asked to call Mayor Anderson and ask him to call our Congressman, Mr. Heck, which he did, to explain the importance of doing this. And I'm sure the mayor has more information on this than I do, but in summary, Mr. Heck did say that there's expected to be local government funding available as part of the next stimulus bill, which they're calling 4.0. The bill before Congress this week or today is $470 billion. A good portion of that, let me see if I can find the number, 310 billion of it is for continued support of businesses and support of the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. And the reason being is because they ran out of money on the previous allocation on Thursday, sometime on Thursday. It also includes funding for hospitals, economic disaster loans, and $25 billion for COVID-19 testing. And it's expected council and the president are expected to take action on that later this week. At the local front, we did submit our grant application for the COVID-19 Emergency Supplemental Funding Grant. That is through the Edward JAG grant program, which we're very familiar with. And so I want to thank our Assistant Police Chief, John Unfrid, for doing that. Also, our CFO, Todd Kraus, is currently in the process of summarizing all of our FEMA reimbursable costs, which probably are not going to be that much, but again, we want to be able to submit for that sooner rather than later. Also at the local level, something that we have been concerned about is having enough N95 masks, and our Assistant Police Chief was able to secure another 500, and with another 500 on the way. So that will give us in hand 1,500 of them, which given on kind of our burn rate with use by primarily police patrol, be enough for the next 6 to 9 months. And then as it relates to that previous grant that I mentioned, we have requested funding to buy another 2,500. At the same time, we also have the ability to reuse and sterilize some existing masks. However, that is at a only if absolutely necessary. As I mentioned last week, the governor has been asked, or rather directed by the Washington State Supreme Court, to address the spread of the virus in our state penitentiaries. And almost 1,200 inmates have been identified to be released from the 12 state prisons, penitentiaries, and commitment centers statewide. And long story short, they're broken down into really 3 groups. The smallest group are those that are currently on furlough, which is 41. The next are commutation list, which is 461. Those are individuals defined as kind of low-level offenders. However, unfortunately, they do have the propensity to reoffend, particularly in the area of property crimes and burglaries and things along those lines. And then the third, the largest group, are what's called rapid reentry. And however, those individuals, when they're released, will still be under supervision by Department of Corrections. Department of Corrections has been very helpful in working with the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs on this, and been very open and transparent. And even though the governor did stipulate in his order that return to county of origin has been waived, Department of Corrections is still trying to abide by that. And so that's where we are on that. Last week.
John?
Yes, Councilman Boki.
Before we get off COVID, I'd like to ask a question about you hear stories about Western State. Have you been in contact with Western State at all, and what that situation is because a lot of those folks who work there live in our communities. So did they update you? Has anybody updated you at all from either Western State or DSHS about the situation at Western State in regards to COVID-19?
So as it relates, the information that we've been getting about Western State Hospital has been flowing through the Pierce County DEM EOC, as well as the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department DOC. And I think the latest numbers that we had, I think is upwards of 40 employees, as well as a handful of patients, including one, unfortunately, who has passed, a patient. We do know early on that they communicated that they essentially shut the hospital down in terms of people who can come in and come out. I can tell you that Chief Mike Zarro, right off the back, prohibited his staff from going over there unless it's a 911 call. Actually, I'm not aware there have been any since this emergency took place, but any communication as it relates to our community services program has all been done remotely, either over the phone or through Zoom like this and the like. So that's what we know. And we do know that, DSHS is, working hard to try and protect not just the patients, but also their employees. So again, the information that we're getting in terms of what's reliable and accurate is actually coming up again through the health department in Pierce County DEM. Last week, there was a question regarding the Tacoma City Council holding a public hearing regarding tide flat regulations. This public hearing is actually to continue the interim regulations that they put in place about actually coming up on 6 months ago now. And if you recall, both the City of Lakewood and SSMCP did provide feedback and comments there. So this action here is simply to extend them for another 6 months as they continue to work through their sub-area planning process. So, I would view this as really, quite frankly, just some general housekeeping amendments for the Tacoma City Council. I know a question was asked, should we go and testify? And my answer to that is I don't believe there is a reason for us to do that because, again, they're not making any changes to the interim regulations. All they're doing is extending them for another 6 months, which is something that they're required to do under law. I think another question, and this came up during the legislative process. was the state going to be looking at cutting back on criminal justice training academies? And we learned earlier today the answer to that is no. So even though the current academy has been recessed, and I think they're doing stuff remotely, they do expect to be able to run all of the 21 academies between now and beginning of July 2021 over the next two-year period. So that's the latest that we have up on that. On the census, I really want to compliment our Tiffany Spear, one of our planning managers in support of special projects. Last week, she worked with the Pierce County Auditor and a number of other cities, as well as a number of our partners, to get out a postcard to our community, in particular to those underrepresented areas who have not been responding to the census, as well as reaching out to others to get information out there via their communication devices. And so that happened last week. Lakewood as a whole, almost 56% of Lakewood has responded. We're a little bit behind the state, which is a little bit over 56%. However, nationwide, just a little over 50%. So we're certainly holding our own. And we're right in the middle of the pack, or actually kind of on the higher end of the pack, in terms of cities and towns in Washington State. We rank 124 out of 281 cities and towns in terms of response. But still, there's a lot of work to be done there. And again, particularly in some of our underserved and underrepresented areas, and we're going to continue to move forward on that with our community partners. On the economic development front, I just wanted to report, Mr. Buer let me know that actually our revenue collections over the last month, last half of March into early April, 29-day period, was actually quite robust. So that's the good news. The not so good news is that it's really kind of slowed down about the last week and a half or so, which is to be expected, because I think the longer this goes on, there's a level of uncertainty and caution and things along those lines. We did receive a note last week as part of our Lakewood Landing team. They were doing some work, and somebody made the comment that right now leasing is dead. So there's no commercial leasing going on at this point in time, and nobody should be surprised by that. The Military and Civilian Services Summit, which is sponsored by South Sound Militaries and Communities Partnership, is going to be happening on this Thursday, and it kicks off at 7:55 a.m. in the morning. And actually, Deputy Mayor Jason Whalen is one of the key MCs in the morning, helping facilitate that. It's going to be a purely virtual event. And so you should have all received an email if you want to attend. You don't have to, listen in on the whole thing. But there are some exciting speakers, as well as some really good programs in the afternoon if you have an interest. And again, the target audience, remains our military affiliated community partners and providers. So again, I want to thank Sarah Luna and Bill Adamson for really their work here and pulling this off, as well as getting some assistance from other folks as well. I think Pierce County Information Technology has been great as well to help us out with this. And then let's see, AWC conference, unfortunately, they have canceled that. However, they are looking to have a virtual event, maybe not for the whole conference, but maybe some specific classes and discussion topics. So probably more to come on that. Lakeview Light and Power is having their 98th annual meeting, and I'll be honest with you, I forgot who is going to attend that meeting. So the meeting is going to be done over Zoom this Thursday at 6:30. And I thought perhaps we had asked one of our staff to do that and to vote, or if anybody on council wants to do that. So I apologize, but I forgot. So maybe I'll hold off on council comments, Mayor, if that's something that you wanted to come back to.
I think Mr. Branstetter raised his hand. Are you raising your hand regarding the meeting or a question?
Well, I have attended that meeting in the past and I can do so again. But I had a question for Mr. Caulfield regarding the AWC conference. And how is that working with respect to the Quality Communities Scholarship? Both the decision and is that one of the things that's probably going to be done virtually to recognize recipients?
So I know for sure they're still moving forward with the process to select the scholarship winners, Mr. Branstetter. But as far as how they're going to go about it and will it be a virtual event, I haven't seen any information on that as of today anyways. Though actually, I haven't checked their website in about 3 or 4 days. So probably more to come.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see anything on the website today, and so I was just wondering if you heard.
No, I had not, no.
Any other questions from Mr. Caulfield?
Can I end on a high note?
I don't, yeah, which,
I want to end on a high note. So the high note is that, so our Todd Kraus, who will be in front of you next week to give you an update on our city finances for 2019, closing out 19, as well as our proposed carry forward, which, by the way, my recommendation is just to carry forward the bare minimum in terms of what we're doing. I'm not going to have any new projects or new ideas or anything in there, just given the current situation. But I did want to point out that we ended 2019 in a much, much stronger financial position than originally anticipated. A lot of that had to do with, increased revenues above and beyond what we anticipated. A lot of that tied back to the strength of both the local and regional economy. So some good news there. Likewise, positive reflection on our department directors and their staff in terms of, also all operating, the operating budgets coming in under budget as well. Though, again, you'll see in the numbers still very, 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 very tight. So that is going to allow us some flexibility in 2020. The fact is that without COVID-19, if this didn't exist, we would be looking so good right now as we rolled into 21 and 22. Now, that's not the way the world is. But again, the good news is that that enlarged fund balance, particularly in our general fund, is going to allow us some additional options above and beyond probably what we thought we had available in terms of dipping into reserves and such. So that's some really, really good news there. And so we'll have more for you on that. And then I'm hoping in early May to have a better understanding of what the potential impact is on our general fund and maybe some of our other funds as it relates to this current situation. And I'll just be frank with you, Ta and I are taking a very slow route to this as opposed to trying to jump to some conclusions. There is some data out there that we can formulate some good underlying assumptions, again, before we just kind of jump out and arbitrarily say it's going to be this, that, or the other thing. Because the fact of the matter is there's a lot of information out there that shows the glass is half full. And then, there's some information out there that perhaps the glass is half empty. So more to follow on that. But again, I wanted to end on a high note that 2019 was very, very positive, and would also like to point out it's a very positive reflection on this body as well as the financial policies that we have. And the financial policies have served us well during times of when we're doing well, and then I also firmly believe that our financial policies will serve us very well, and more importantly, during times of constraint. So with that, Mayor, that's my report. And certainly if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer.
any questions for Mr. Caulfield? Well, then we'll move to council comments. Ms. Moss.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, for the good news. And it's good to see everybody still staying well. Take care.
Ms. Farmer.
I got this in the mail today. Home repair program notification. And so I urge anybody, the eligibility requirements are on the first inside page there. There's some wonderful things that could come your way. Please take a look. And if you haven't gotten it in the mail, go to the city's website or make a phone call to 253-983-7754. That's it for me.
Thank you. Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, I'm just excited about all the road work going on in this beautiful weather. And so it looks like they're making great progress on the 88th Street portion of Stilichon Boulevard, and they're beginning to make progress on Onyx. And I've told everybody that if they have any complaints when they start cutting down the trees, to call Deputy Mayor Whalen. So I'll handle that.
Thank you. Mr. Bradstetter.
I'm good, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great news hearing that the parks are going to be reopened. And otherwise, so far, so good. And it's good to see all of you. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Whalen.
Thank you. I want to echo the good news on opening of the parks. I think that's something that's going to help a lot of folks alleviate stress and anxiety as they're able to safely, in a social distanced way, enjoy nature and get out and enjoy the park properties that they're supporting. In terms of the COVID response, there are some good online Zoom meetings that are being conducted by the Economic Development Board of Tacoma Pierce County. Many of you know that I was the chair last year and I am the past chair this year, and actively involved in their work. And they are usually 3 times a week at designated times, having a phone-in opportunity for people to dial in and listen to experts and other folks within the community explain facts on topics of interest. So if you want to weigh into that, I think the city manager or Bryn can send out a list of the dates and times that those can be made available for anyone in the community who wants to dial in and just listen. So today was a comment on the recent federal legislation that hopefully will lead to round 2, 3, or whatever it is on the payroll protection program for many of our small businesses who are certainly in need of it at this time. So the community tends to rally around good information. So the more that we can dial people into, the better. And other than that, it's a beautiful week, so hopefully we'll get a chance to enjoy that. Thanks for the update, Mr. Caulfield, on the positive financial picture, at least, flowing from 2019. If we can make it even better for the third quarter of 2020, then that'll be a good kudo for you. So we look forward to that. Thank you. I'm sure you're going to pull it off there, John. You're going to make it happen.
So did I miss anybody? Going around the screen is
Deputy Mayor's
quite
killing
different.
me, Mayor. Deputy Mayor's killing me. That's too much pressure.
You didn't bring snacks, John. So as the city manager indicated, I had a conversation with Congressman Heck earlier today. He's a strong advocate of direct aid to cities under 500,000. As you may know, I think it was round 2 gave governments 500,000 or greater, whether they're cities or counties, is an astonishing amount of money, along with states, but left out cities under 500,000. It would be nice to have a per capita type distribution, much as you get through the CDBG program, without all those strings, of course. He indicated that it was in what they were calling 3.5, but as that's moved out of committee or bounced around in Congress, it got dropped. He assured me that there will be a 4.0. He said there has to be, and that was an essential element of that. And he believed that cities under 500,000 would be the beneficiary of 4.0 funding if it didn't get amended back into 3.5. So he's well aware of it. He's an advocate for our position, and we hope that he's as good a prognosticator as he has been a legislator. I too am pleased to see we're moving to open parks to allow responsible recreation, and happy to see that road work going on. A sign of progress. On another front, I attended a Zoom, actually it was Blue Jeans, I guess, Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board meeting on Thursday for allocation of transit funding. It was coming down as part of the CARES funding. The formula they used is a formula that has been in existence for allocations for other purposes. It was used out of expediency. It frankly shortchanged the Pierce Transit Authority and others in similar positions, and the rich got richer. That was acknowledged or brought up not only by myself, but by probably a half dozen other people, including Bruce Dameyer as chair, Derek Kilmer as a council member, and some folks from more diverse jurisdictions. So they'll be looking at that funding in the future for that funding formula in the future, but at this point, it didn't do us any good. Also, on another note, I would note you may see a Cairo report involving me. I made a personal Facebook post critical of Liquor and Control Board agents coming to the country club and telling people while they could walk on their own property, they couldn't carry golf clubs while they did it. Even though social distancing, the club was closed and social distancing was being observed. And also critical of enforcement of restrictions on boating, which turned out to be inaccurately reported by the marina operators. It was intimidation, it wasn't enforcement. And I was the victim of Cairo News taking a third-party post that had a picture of the governor calling him a name and a critical comment and attributing that to me. That was not my post. I wouldn't do that. I talk about issues. Name calling is the lowest formal argument. It said I confirmed that that was my post. The reporter who did that is someone who has had similar issues in the past. And you can't argue with folks that in the old days they said had barrels of ink. But I did go up the chain, and they slightly changed the online post to say essentially that I'd stopped beating my wife. So, take it for what it's worth. It wasn't true. It's an example of political agenda creeping into media on all sides. And we have to remember that there is a place for critical discussion of measures taken, even though we all believe, I think in this group anyway, that it's a bad idea to have assemblies of people. It's a bad idea to play 3-on-3 basketball in the park, that we need to maintain social distancing, that we need to help our neighbors. But, Don Anderson, they also attributed it to me as mayor. I didn't post it as mayor. But Don Anderson's belief is that if the owners of 145 acres of land want to walk around one person to every 5 acres and carry a golf club, they should be able to, because it's not doing anything for social distancing to deny that. So we can have different opinions without being crude and calling names. And unfortunately, as big as Cairo is, they didn't do their homework. So is there anything else to come before council? All hearing none, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.